Aloha and welcome back to the Bodhi Sparks podcast. My name is Jisunny or Dr. J, and I am incredibly grateful to be able to spend this time with you today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about fears. And if you've been following me for a little bit, you know that there is a book out called The Bodhi Blueprint, where I talk about the 3 core and fundamental human fears that we have that actually run the show behind the scenes. So this month in the Bodhi Sparks community, we are actually working on turning fear into gold. And I've been feeling inspired about this idea that fear, in fact, it's not just recently that I'm actually feeling inspired by this, but it's something that I've come to know in the past few years. If nothing else, that this journey that we're on, you and I, is all about showing up in the face of our fears and to turn that into fuel. So we're actually working on turning our fears into gold in the Bodhi Sparks community. And I wanted to share a little bit about the fundamental thing about fear and what it is that we need to know in order to turn fear into gold or into fuel. Have you ever noticed that no matter how much you grow, learn, or evolve, fear always seems to find a way to whisper in your ear? I've spent years studying people, my clients, my mentors, my friends, and yes, even myself. And I've discovered that most of the decisions we make come down to 3 core fears. That's what the Bodhi Sparks, or not the Bodhi Sparks, the Bodhi Blueprint is about. These fears are ancient, they're primal, and they're universal. And they metaphorically map across the triune brain. So, in the world of psychology, there's this thing called the triune brain. It's this notion, this idea that our human brains, we think of it as just one big blob, but it's actually made up of 3 different layers or levels. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this triune brain that we have, and the 3 core fundamental human fears that map across to the 3 levels of our brain, have these voices that sound a little bit like this. Am I safe? Am I alone? Am I enough? Take a moment right now and see which one resonates the most for you. Am I safe? Am I alone? Am I enough? That little whisper, that's where your next breakthrough is actually hiding. The best way to conceptualize fear for your highest good is to think of it like this. Imagine that you're a hamster. You've been gifted this cozy little cage with all the comforts you could ever need. The hamster wheel, some food, maybe even a little tiny house. You could run all day on that wheel and feel like you're doing something. But deep down inside, you know that you're not getting anywhere. Now, what if I told you that the real trap isn't the wheel itself? It's the glass cage around it. See, you can see the outside world from your glass cage. You can feel that there's more. But there's this invisible wall, fear, that keeps you from exploring it. And this is how most of us live. We've mistaken our comfort zones for our safety zones. And every time we run up against the glass, fear whispers, don't go there. It's not safe. Stay small. But our spirit, your spirit, was actually never meant for smallness. It was meant for adventure. So let's go deeper into these 3 fears, because each one plays a significant role in that invisible cage. The first fear that maps across to your reptilian brain is the oldest fear. This is the part of you that keeps you surviving, alive, and safe. It's your survival mode. And this fear asks or whispers that question, am I safe? This is what keeps you in the job that drains you, that 9 to 5 that you just go on autopilot to maybe keep a roof over your head, keep you fed. Maybe this fear is the relationship that no longer nourishes you, or a pattern perhaps in your life that feels predictable but lifeless. Safety isn't wrong, but when it rules your choices, it costs you your freedom. So ask yourself, am I choosing comfort or am I choosing growth? The second fear lives deep in the heart space. It's also the fear that maps across to the mammalian part of your triune brain. It's the voice that whispers, am I alone? It's the voice that drives you to overgive, to people please, to sacrifice yourself, compromise your integrity and your values, and saying yes when every part of you screams no. It's the fear that if you show your truth, your real, authentic self, that you'll be rejected, left out, unloved. But what if the version of you that you keep hiding is the very one that's meant to connect you most deeply to others? And then finally, there's that third core fundamental human fear. Am I enough? Now, this one is a little bit sneaky because it wears lots of disguises. Achievement, perfectionism, comparison. It's that whisper that tells you, if I do just a little bit more, become a little bit better, then maybe I'll finally feel worthy, like I matter. But the truth is, you were already enough before you ever lifted a finger. Fear wants you to forget that, because when you remember, you become unstoppable. So let's take a deep breath here. Which of these fears feel loudest for you right now? Safety, belonging, or worthiness? Whichever one it is, that's the one that you need to pay attention to. This is where your breakthrough is. So when I think about some of these fundamental philosophies, shall we call it, that comes across my awareness, I find it truly fascinating. Because these three fears, as I've alluded to just a moment ago, actually mirror the three parts of your triune brain. So we've talked about the reptilian brain. This is the ancient, protective, control. It's all about control. It's that part of your brain. And it questions, am I safe? Now, when the reptilian brain is activated, it's on high alert, it's going to turn off the other parts of the brain, which we'll get to now. The mammalian brain, the emotional, the relational, the part of you that craves belonging, that part of your brain asks, am I loved? Now, when this part of the brain is activated, it's going to actually turn off the next part of your brain, which is the human brain or the neocortex. The neocortex, or your human part of the brain, is the visionary part of you, the part of you that likes to make meaning. And it questions, am I enough? Now, the brain works in a logical sequence where if the reptilian brain is activated, it turns off the other parts, which is why if you're about to get run over by a train, it doesn't matter that fight that you had with your friend, whether you smooth it over or not. If you're feeling extremely emotional because you feel like the person in front of you at Walmart or Target or whatever store you're in is disrespecting you, then it doesn't matter what you're going to wear to the party on Saturday night, right? So the brain works with these little safety mechanisms in place where if the reptilian brain is activated, it turns off the mammalian and the human brain. If the mammalian brain is activated, it's going to turn off the human brain. It's really important to remember this because the next time, let's say you're in a heated conversation with a colleague, if you could just take a half a beat to remember that when you're flooded with emotions, you actually lose some IQ points, it makes a big difference in terms of how you might show up next. So it's a nice little aside I wanted to add in there as a bonus for you. So each part of those brains is actively trying to keep you balanced. But the thing about fear is that it hijacks that balance. Your reptilian brain, when it's hijacked by fear, begins to over control. Your mammalian brain, when it's hijacked by fear, it tends to overgive. And then your human brain, when it's hijacked by fear, begins to overthink. Does this sound familiar? The work here isn't to get rid of these parts of you. It's not to resist fear. It's to integrate them. It's to let each part of your brain feel heard and safe so that your higher self, your best self, can take the lead. You can even pause and say to yourself something like, "It's okay, fear. I know you're trying to protect me, but I'm ready for something more." So if it helps, like it helps me, personify the fear. Imagine fear as an embodied, conscientious being and talk to him or her. "It's okay, fear. I'm safe. I know you're trying to protect me, but I'm ready for something more." Or sometimes I like to see fear as my challenger, that person in my corner that really not only cheerleads me, but actually does the opposite. It goads me on. It challenges me to actually actualize my best self. It's that coach in my right ear that is actually almost talking me down. So I have something to prove to myself so that I can actualize my greatest potential and I can show up. You might have heard this old Cherokee story of the two wolves. A grandmother tells her grandson that there are two wolves living inside every human being. One wolf is made of fear, anger, doubt, envy. The other wolf is made of love, of truth, of compassion. But these two wolves in every single human being are always fighting. And so the boy asks his grandmother, "So which one wins?" The grandmother smiles and replies, "The one you feed." Here's the thing. Most of us spend our lives starving love and feeding fear. We do it every time we choose comfort over courage, self-doubt over self-trust, people-pleasing over being authentic. But what if, just for today, what if you fed the other wolf? What if you looked at fear not as an enemy, but as your teacher saying, "I'm here to show you where you're ready to grow"? When you strip away the incense, the crystals, the rituals, the tarot cards, true spiritual journey always comes down to this. Will you face your fear? Not to conquer it, not to erase it, but to walk with it. Fear shows up every time your soul is about to expand. I'm going to say that again. Fear shows up every time your soul is ready to expand. It's the gatekeeper between who you've been and who you're becoming. So when fear appears, instead of saying, "I can't," try asking, "What is this fear trying to teach me?" Sometimes the lesson is surrender. Sometimes it's boundaries. Sometimes it's faith. Facing fear doesn't always look like skydiving or quitting your job. Sometimes it's as subtle as finally speaking your truth, saying no, or daring to rest when you've spent a lifetime proving your worth. So let's try something together. Make sure that you're not operating a vehicle or doing anything active when you do this. And let's get started. Take a nice, slow, deep breath. And exhale slowly, gently, fully. Now, think of one fear that's been circling your mind lately. Something you've been avoiding or perhaps resisting. Name the fear in your heart. Maybe it's fear of rejection. Mine for the longest time has been fear of being alone. Or maybe it's a fear of failure for you. Now, instead of pushing that fear away, I want you to imagine that fear as a ball of golden light. Yes, golden. Because fear is just energy. It is not your enemy. And energy, my friend, can be transmuted. Place that light in your hands, in your mind's eye. Look at it. Feel it. Then whisper to it, "Thank you for showing me where I'm meant to grow." Now imagine that golden light rising from your hands, flowing back into your heart, merging with your courage, your purpose, your truth. That's what it means to turn your fear into gold, into your fuel. You don't destroy the fear, you alchemize it. When you start to do this work, when you learn to see fear as your teacher, everything changes. You stop needing the world to be safe before you act. You stop waiting for permission to show up, to be your authentic self. And probably one of my most favorite things, you stop apologizing for taking up space. And slowly, the walls of that glass cage begin to crack. You realize they were never really there to begin with. They were made of beliefs, not boundaries. The moment you walk through them, the world opens up to meet you. That's the invitation life is always offering. To trade safety for aliveness, to trade fear for freedom, and to trade self-doubt for divine trust. If this episode resonated with you, if you felt something stir in your chest, and you're ready to start facing your fears, not with judgment, but with compassion, come join us inside Bodhi Sparks. This month, we're exploring the alchemy of fear. Together, we're learning how to identify the fears that quietly run our choices, how to honor fear as our teacher, and how to turn that energy into power, into purpose, and momentum. It's not about becoming fearless. It's about becoming free. Because when you learn to turn fear into gold, you stop living half a life and you start living the one you were born for. Until next time, my friends, remember, courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means you're willing to walk forward with your fear, hand in hand, toward the light of your becoming. Remember to keep sparkling, and I will see you on the other side.